The XC Premium is a beautiful phone, but also the biggest fingerprint magnet you can buy right now. It comes with a 5.5-inch display and a kinda bulky chassis, but it feels good in my hands even though it's huge. The body is made out of glass and metal, and as the name suggests, it feels premium. It also hosts again a fingerprint scanner, but only for the people outside of the US, which I think is kinda stupid. It has got huge bezels, and I would really wish that the bezels would look like on the XA series. But yeah, it's Sony's classic design line. On the left side there is a combined SIM and microSD tray, and on the opposite side there's the power button with the fingerprint scanner, volume keys and a camera button. The bottom houses a USB 3.1 Type-C port, and at the top we have a 3.5mm headphone jack. The phone comes also with good sounding dual speakers next to the stunning 4K display, which makes it a great multimedia device. The sound over the 3.5mm jack sounded pretty good, with no distortion at all. Also worth mentioning is the multicolor notification LED at the top. So far I really like the look, even though it's huge and glossy. The 4K HDR display looks impressive, but to be honest, you barely notice a difference to Full HD, and guess why? Because the phone runs most of the time in 1080p to save battery. But if you go for 4K content, the display shows its sharp side. Especially for VR, this is very useful. The display is also bright with its 550 nits, and the colors, they look good. The white balance can also be adjusted in the ROM, because I noticed that the display looks sometimes a little bit too cool, so it has some kind of blue hue. The performance is excellent, it runs Android 7 Nougat and the UI is very fast. Coming from the XA, it feels like a different universe. The Snapdragon 835 with 4GB of RAM and 64GB of ROM performs well, and surprisingly, the phone stays really cool, so there's no overheating. The UI looks like on any other Sony phone with some minor changes, but to be honest, I like it simple. There are some apps pre-installed, but there's no bloat, so there are just some PlayStation apps and games and nothing serious. But it's also pretty cool to have the PlayStation app, because you can use the phone for game streaming from the PS4 without having to install anything. Too bad that the camera app is still the same, with most of the features quite hidden and not very easy to access, like the 4K recording mode. However, the camera sensor did also shrink from 23 megapixels to 90 megapixels, while improving the image quality. The pictures look very good under daylight conditions, we have accurate colors, we have no oversaturation, we have good dynamic range and plenty of detail. However, if it comes to moderate or low light, the camera could not really impress us. Sony said that there will be a final software update to improve it, but I guess what you're seeing here is very close to the final quality, but let's see. A really cool improvement is the new Motion Eye tech, which allows taking photos of fast moving objects with almost no distortion. So if you're shooting a speeding car for instance, this will give you a still sharp picture, like if the car would park somewhere. If you're interested, we did an early camera review last week, so check it out here. One of the highlights is definitely slow motion videos. The new Sony smartphone can shoot HD clips at 960 FPS, but only gives you 6 seconds of slow motion footage, because this requires an incredible amount of data. By pressing the shutter button in just the right moment, it will let the smartphone record for less than a second in 960 FPS and then boost it up to 6 seconds of slow motion. Getting the right time and getting the right frame can be hard, because it records only for a very short time, but you can press the shutter button as often as you want to. But just remember guys, it's very hard to actually press it before the action starts and that you get the correct frame in slow motion. Now for sure it can also record 4K with good details and stabilization, and the front-facing camera comes with a huge 30 megapixel sensor, but to be honest, it was not so impressive. Especially not in low light, where our iPhone performed better, but let's wait for the final software. The XC Premium comes with a 3230 mAh power pack, which gave me around 5 hours of screen on time. So for me it lasted a day as a heavy user, and the battery life should be on par with the Samsung Galaxy S8. However, it supports Qualcomm's next generation Quick Charge 4.0 and charges up to 60% within 45 minutes, and that's very nice. Another new feature in this phone is also Bluetooth 5.0, and it comes again with NFC. Connectivity was pretty good, no signal drops, fast speeds and good GPS performance, so good job Sony. I couldn't do any benchmarks because on my test phone with the non-final software there was the Antutu installation blocked, so they also blocked Geekbench and some other things, and I had no time to do a workaround. However, I managed to run the test without score and it looked very smooth. Also gaming was a pleasure and the UI showed no signs of lags. So performance-wise, it's a beast with the 4K screen. And all in all, the phone is definitely great. But looks like a pimped old-fashioned smartphone with some mirror effect. The display is definitely my highlight, even though it runs most of the time at 1080p anyway. Price to performance is great and the camera is good, even though I expected it to be a lot